I knew breaking up with Lisa wouldn't be easy. She wasn't the type to let things go. When she loved you, she clung to you, like she needed you to breathe. And when things went wrong, she made sure you felt every bit of her anger. At first, I tried to be understanding. She flooded my phone with texts and calls, most of them long-winded messages about how she still loved me, how she'd change, how we were meant to be together. Then, when I stopped responding, the messages turned into threats. She told me I was making a mistake, that I'd regret it, that she'd make me regret it. I should have taken it more seriously. It was late, past 2 a.m. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard the first sound, a faint tapping against my window. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was the wind, but then I heard it again. I turned over and reached for my phone, using the screen's light to scan the room. My blinds were partially drawn, and through the small gap, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A face. Lisa was standing outside my window. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe I was dreaming. But as my eyes adjusted, I could see her clearly, her pale face illuminated by the soft glow of my phone screen. Her hair was a mess, her expression completely blank. Then she smiled. Before I could react, I heard a noise from the back of the house. The door handle rattled. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. My brain was still catching up, trying to make sense of what was happening. Lisa was at my window, but someone, or maybe it was still her, was trying to get inside. Then came the sound that sent a jolt of fear straight through me. Glass breaking. I jumped out of bed and locked my bedroom door. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I kept my voice low, whispering into the receiver as I told them what was happening. The operator was calm, asking me if I was somewhere safe. I barely had time to answer before I heard footsteps in the house. My closet was the only real hiding spot in my room. I squeezed inside, pressing myself into the corner, trying to steady my breathing. The phone was still in my hand. The operator's voice, a low hum in my ear. Lisa was inside the house. I could hear her moving, her footsteps getting closer. She was walking down the hall, heading straight for my bedroom. Then she reached the door. A soft creak filled the air as she tested the handle. Locked. For a moment there was silence. Then I heard a loud bang. She was trying to break the door down. I held my breath, every muscle in my body locked up with fear. The first hit cracked the wood. The second one merely splintered it in half. By the third, the door flew open. I could hear her breathing uneven, almost excited. She took a few slow steps into the room. I could hear her moving around, could almost feel her presence on the other side of the closet door. Then suddenly, the doors were ripped open. Lisa stood there, staring down at me. There was something wild in her eyes. Her lips curled into a slow, unsettling smile. And then I saw it, the knife in her hand. My stomach dropped. She hadn't come here to talk. She hadn't come here to cry or beg or scream at me. She had come here with a plan. She took a step closer. My mind was racing, searching for something, anything I could do. But before I could move, before she could do whatever she had planned, I heard sirens. The flashing red and blue lights flooded through my window, painting the walls with streaks of color. Lisa froze. The knife in her hand trembled slightly. She had seconds to react, and for a moment, I saw the realization sink in. She had run out of time. I didn't waste the opportunity. I shoved her hard, knocking her off balance. The knife slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. Before she could grab it, I bolted out of the closet, running straight for the front door. The moment I reached it, the police were already inside. Officers swarmed the house, weapons drawn, shouting orders. Lisa barely had time to react before they tackled her to the ground. She screamed, thrashing violently as they pinned her down. But even as they cuffed her, even as they dragged her toward the door, she turned her head and smiled at me. It was the same eerie, unsettling smile she had given me through the window. Like she wasn't done. Like this was just the beginning. The police found her car parked down the street. Inside, they discovered a bag filled with duct tape, rope, and an extra knife. She had been planning something that night. Something much worse than just breaking in. She was charged with breaking and entering, attempted assault, and stalking. A restraining order was put in place. But even with her behind bars, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't safe. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without double-checking the locks. Couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there, watching me. Lisa had always been obsessed, and now she had proven just how far she was willing to go. I don't know why I'm telling the story now. Maybe because, even years later, I still find myself lying awake at night, staring at my window, wondering what could have happened, wondering what he wanted, wondering if he had been watching me long before that night. It was my 3rd year in college, close to the end of the semester. The last exam was only a few hours away, and I had stayed up late cramming, the way I always did before a big test. My apartment was a 2-story building, but I stayed on the ground floor, which I had never thought much about until that night. I remember checking the time, 3:07 a.m. My head ached from exhaustion, but I told myself I'd push through for another hour before getting some rest. The room was dimly lit by my study lamp, the only source of light apart from my phone screen. I lived alone, and the apartment was eerily silent, with only the occasional creak of the building settling. And then I heard it, a sound at my window. At first, I thought my tired mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe it was the wind, or a stray cat. But then, before I could process it, the sound became something much worse, a ripping noise, like fabric being torn apart. I turned my head, and that's when I saw it. A bright, blinding light hit my face through the window. The shock of it sent a jolt through my body, my brain barely registering what was happening. Someone was there, right outside my window. For a split second, I couldn't move. My mind tried to make sense of the situation. The window had a metal protector and a net, but the net, he had ripped through it, and now he was staring at me through the gaps, the beam of his flashlight locking me in place like prey caught in a trap. Then he spoke. I couldn't see his face, only the harsh glow of his torch, but his voice was low, commanding. He told me to open the back door. If I didn't, he said, he would shoot me. That's when the fear truly set in. I had no idea if he actually had a gun. I couldn't see anything but that awful light. But in that moment, I wasn't about to take any chances. My body acted before my brain could. I bolted. My room had 2 doors, one at the front and one at the back. The back door was where he was, so I ran for the only other place I could think of, the bathroom. I slammed the door shut, my breathing ragged. My hands trembled as I pressed my back against the cold tile wall, trying to stay silent. Then, the light appeared again. Through the tiny bathroom window, I saw it, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He had followed me. He was standing right outside. That was when the real panic kicked in. If he was following me this closely, it meant one thing. He wasn't just here to rob me. If he only wanted my laptop, my phone, my wallet, he could have taken them by now if he asked for them, because I was scared for my life. But he wasn't asking for my valuables. He wanted to get inside my room. He was outside, hunting me. I wasn't safe here. I didn't have time to think. The second he moved away from the bathroom, I ran. I threw open the door, sprinting back into my room, barely registering the fact that I left everything behind. My phone, my laptop, all of it. My only thought was getting out. I burst through the front door, my feet barely touching the ground as I tore up the stairs to the 2nd floor. My neighbor's door was locked, and I pounded on it, my heart slamming against my ribs. When he finally opened up, I must have looked insane, barefoot, gasping for breath, words tumbling out of me so fast they barely made sense. I told him everything, the man, the flashlight, the threat. By the time we gathered others and went back down, the man was gone. But my room, the window net was shredded, the torn fabric hanging loosely from the frame, but nothing else had been touched. My phone was still on my desk, my laptop sitting exactly where I had left it. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had even been moved. By morning, I inspected the damage in daylight. The net had been completely ripped apart, leaving a gaping hole where someone's hands had forced their way in. That was the part that haunted me the most. Why didn't he take anything? Why was my room the only one he targeted? And worst of all, had he been watching me long before that night? I don't know if I'll ever have the answers, but what I do know is that I don't sleep with my curtains open anymore, and I haven't studied near a window since. I never used to be afraid of being home alone. In fact, I liked it. I'm 19 and still live with my parents, but they travel a lot for work, so I'm used to having the house to myself. My parents trust me, and honestly, I'm not the type to throw parties or sneak people over. I just enjoy the quiet. At least I used to. This happened a few months ago when my parents left for a weekend trip. They were flying out Friday afternoon and wouldn't be back until late Sunday night. We live in a suburban neighborhood, not too crowded, not too isolated. It's the kind of place where you don't expect anything bad to happen. I thought this weekend would be just like the others. I spent most of the evening in my room, watching movies and scrolling through my phone. Around 11 p.m., I decided to get a snack from the kitchen before heading to bed. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed something strange. The back door, the sliding glass door leading to the backyard, was slightly open. I immediately froze. I was sure I had locked it earlier. My parents are strict about keeping doors locked, and it's a habit that's been drilled into me. But here it was, open just a few inches. I felt a cold wave of fear rush over me. Did I forget to lock it? Or worse, had someone been in the house? I quickly shut and locked the door, double-checking it. Then I went through the house, turning on all the lights and making sure everything was locked. Nothing seemed out of place, and I told myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe I had left it open when I let the dog out earlier. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. The next morning, I woke up to a text message from an unknown number. "You should lock your doors." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. I stared at the message, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was just a prank. A wrong number? Before I could even decide how to respond, another message came in. "Nice house. I bet it's quiet when you're alone." I felt sick. Someone was watching me. I ran to the front door and made sure it was locked. Then I checked all the windows. Everything was secure. I even looked outside but didn't see anyone. I wanted to call the police, but what would I even tell them? That I got 2 creepy texts? They probably wouldn't take it seriously. I tried to convince myself it was just a sick joke, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. That night, I couldn't relax. I kept my bedroom door locked and barely slept. Every little sound made me jump. At some point, around 2 a.m., I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. Footsteps. They weren't coming from outside. They were inside the house. I held my breath, straining to listen. They were coming from downstairs, moving through the living room. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I reached for my phone and dialed 911, as quietly as I could. I whispered into the phone, telling the dispatcher that someone was in my house. She told me to stay on the line and remain quiet. The footsteps were getting closer. I heard the floor creak right outside my bedroom door. I had locked it, but that suddenly didn't feel like enough. I needed to hide. I slipped into my closet, shutting the door just as I heard my bedroom door handle jiggle. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. Whoever was outside tried the handle again. Then I heard a soft click. They were picking the lock. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I whispered to the dispatcher that someone was trying to get into my room. Then, the scariest sound of my life, my bedroom door opening. I could hear someone stepping inside. Slow, careful steps. Then silence. Whoever it was, they were standing in my room, listening. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying the police would get here in time. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I heard a new sound, sirens. The moment the sirens blared outside, I heard the person in my room bolt. They ran down the hallway, down the stairs, and I heard the back door slam open. I stayed frozen in the closet until I heard the police shouting downstairs. When they finally cleared the house and found me, I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. The police never caught the person. They found signs of forced entry in the basement window. Someone had been inside my house, probably since Friday night. They had been watching me. The texts, the unlocked door, the footsteps, it wasn't just paranoia. Someone had been in my home, waiting. I haven't stayed home alone since.